Good afternoon. My name is Ken Chaya. I'm in the middle of Central Park, one of my favorite places in the whole world. I'm an urban naturalist. I love to come to this park and observe nature, whether it's an insect or a migrant bird or the trees that grow here. Speaking of the trees, I created a tree map that can be found on centralparknature.com, my website. It's also sold here in the park. It contains 20,000 trees identified by species on the map. It's the most detailed map of the park. That is the project that set me on this path as an urban naturalist. And today what I'm going to do is take you on a tour of Central Park and introduce you to some of the trees that can be found here. Here, by the way, is a project that I did with the help of the Central Park Conservancy. I designed 3 tree walks. This is one of them. We're on it right now, and designed these tree plaques with the common name and scientific name of each tree. I supervise the installation of those plaques, and this is something that serves the community in terms of educating people about trees, why they're important, why we have them, and why more and more of them are necessary.
Ken, why don't you say hi to the people watching from Spain and Chechnya?
Spain, Chechnya, well, hello. Welcome to New York, the Big Apple. We're here in Central Park, and this is a place full of native as well as non-native trees. Here's one of them. This is called London Plane. Now, if you look, the bark flakes right off the tree like that. This is called exfoliation. It's normal, it's healthy, it's what allows the tree to grow and expand and add another ring every year. One day a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Ken, what's happening to the trees? They're all dying." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I walked into the park and they were all shedding their bark." I said, "Was it a London plane tree?" He said, "I'm not sure what kind." I said, "Did the bark look like sort of a camouflage?" He said, "Yeah, that's it." I said, "It's not dying, it's living. It's growing. It's expanding and shedding bark in order for it to grow."
Ken, how old is this tree? Someone's asking.
This tree, great question. Many of the London plane trees were planted in the 1930s. This was what I would call the second successive planting of Central Park, following the design of Central Park in 1858 by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, 2 brilliant men during the 1800s who took a rugged swamp, a malarial swamp of uneven rocky land, and turned it into this, well, the most beautiful park in the world. And some people might argue with that, but what you can't argue with is that it's the most visited park in the world. 40 million annual visitors. Let's take a walk and look at some more of Central Park. We're passing under a lovely tree that has heart-shaped leaves. Right now they're yellow and green. They're turning from green to yellow. This is
Heart-shaped
called...
leaves. Would you give us some hearts for the heart-shaped leaves, guys? We'd appreciate it.
This is what we need from you, some hearts, please. This is a tree called a redbud. It's a native tree, and it produces brilliant red magenta flowers in the spring before the leaves occur. Now, right over here, we're coming to a nice open little meadow full of oak trees. These are pin oaks.
Oh, is this hello from France?
Oh, hello,
Hi from France. We're glad you're watching.
I don't have my reading glasses on, but yeah, come on with me.
Also, let us know any questions that you guys have about the park and the fall leaves that we're seeing.
This bird is called a pigeon, or a feral rock dove. They occur everywhere, just about every major city, including those in France and Spain, as well as New York. This is a non-New York native. It's a bird that came here from Europe. Now, if you take a walk in this park or anywhere else, and if you see 3 species of birds, you'll probably see a pigeon, and a starling, and a house sparrow. And this is Ken Chaya in Central Park, talking to you about the bird life that we're seeing here, as well as the magnificent autumn fall foliage. This is the best time of year to come to the park because we have a variety of color and textures, much like this heart-shaped redbud leaf. The leaves are turning colors because the chlorophyll production has stopped, and the colors that are in that leaf that are masked by chlorophyll turning it green have now ceased chlorophyll production. So the colors that are embedded in there are allowed to come out, and the leaf will soon be falling to the ground. You know, you could find an enormous amount of information. It's almost like a CSI episode by looking not just up at the trees, but down on the ground. So for instance, these lovely trees right here, we're looking at American elms, we're looking at pin oaks, and if I just look down, and I can probably come up with a couple of very typical leaves of the pin oak, Quercus palustris. It has really deep sinuses and long lobes with a bristle, sort of a little bristle tip. I don't know if you could see that. A little bristle tip right there. The acorn, which is technically the fruit of this tree, can also be found on the ground this time of year because squirrels are hiding them, the trees are dropping them, and sometimes during certain years when there's a lot of them, you're sort of slipping and sliding on them as you walk through the park.
Let's get some hearts, guys, with this beautiful architecture mixed with nature here. Gotta love Central Park. Ken, what building is this?
This is oh look, right behind it, a red-tailed hawk flying between the towers of the Beresford.
How can you see that, guys?
That's a great spotting. We just happened to be looking up over Central Park West at this classic building called the Beresford, and we saw a red-tailed hawk sail from the north tower on the right to the left tower, south tower on the left. Let's see if he perched up there. I'm going to have a look with my binoculars and see if I can locate this hawk. Well, unfortunately he didn't land, but he kept going. This is the time of year where migrant birds are passing over New York on a major route called the Atlantic Flyway. The Atlantic Flyway winds from Canada all the way down to Florida, and some birds keep going even further to Central and even South America. Look at the lovely colors that we're seeing as we pan across Central Park. That enormous rock on the left there is geologically one of the oldest things in the park. It's called Manhattan schist, and Manhattan schist is 450 million years old. That goes all the way back to the time of dinosaurs. This is Ken Chaya in Central Park talking to you, and I welcome your questions. I'm an urban naturalist. This is my office. Welcome to my office. I work here. I lead nature tours. I love to teach people, young and old, all about this wonderful outdoor world that too many New Yorkers missed. Too many New Yorkers don't appreciate enough. And you could find it here in Central Park. You could find it at any of the number of city parks throughout New York City. So when you're thinking of maybe some of our viewers are from Europe, or some of you are from out of town. When you come to visit New York, and you should, please come to Central Park. Visit a living outdoor work of art created by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux that exists to today.
Jen is complimenting your office. She says, great office.
It's got plenty of space to room, plenty of room and to grow, and plenty of space, and it's dynamic. It changes with the seasons. I'd like to show you an area now called Tanner Springs. Tanner Springs is this way, so follow me. We're walking over a ground littered with acorns and oak leaves, and I'm crunching as I walk. Acorns, technically, Acorns technically are the fruit of the oak tree. And what we're looking at is the oak called a pin oak, and this is the acorn with these lovely stripes on top. It's a tiny acorn. Some of the other acorns are much larger. The black oak and the red oak acorn are much larger. This helps me to identify this as a pin oak. Another thing that helps me identify this as a pin oak are these branches that are hanging down. The descending branches on the low trunk tell me that it's a pin oak. It's one of the very few oaks that do that.
What animals eat these? Someone wants to know.
Yes, squirrels and birds also eat these. We have a bird here in New York City called a blue jay. It's a beautiful blue bird. They're here all year round, and if we get a lot of snow that covers the ground, maybe for 2 or 3 months, the birds can't find food on the ground. So they take these acorns and they hide them. One of the places they hide them might be inside the bark. Well, that didn't stay. I'm not a very good blue jay, but they'll hide them inside the bark of a tree and then come and feed on it later.
We have a viewer that wants to know what's the most common tree in Central Park.
Great question. Here's an example of what we would call caching. I just placed that acorn inside of a little hollow crack in this pin oak. I've often seen birds hammer them into this, and as soon as one bird hides one, another bird comes and steals it. So it's a dog-eat-dog world out there here in New York City. The question was, my name is Ken Chaya, and I'm reporting to you through the 92nd Street Y here in Central Park in the middle of New York City. Please ask questions. A question was asked, what is the most common tree in Central Park? Great question. Thank you, whoever asked that. It is a black cherry, Prunus serratina. The black cherry is the most common tree in Central Park for a very good reason. The cherries are delicious, and the birds eat them, and then the birds drop them with a little bit of fertilizer on top, and we have black cherries everywhere. So the actual pit passes through the bird's digestive system, comes out with some fertilizer, and we have black cherries everywhere. I have 3,900 of them on my map, Central Park entire, and believe me, I didn't get every tree. There's quite a few small ones that were not counted. I would estimate we probably have about 5,000 to 6,000 black cherries just in Central Park. Let's take a walk into Tanner Springs now.
Ken, is it true that Yoko Ono owns some trees in Central Park strawberry fields?
Nobody owns, great question, thank you. Nobody owns the trees. The trees are public. This is a public park. Yoko Ono, however, wrote a very big check after the death of her husband, legendary singer, songwriter, ex-Beatle, John Lennon, who was murdered in 1980, I believe, right at the doorstep of Central Park on West 72nd Street. In a memorial to his memory, Yoko Ono financed the creation of a landscape called Strawberry Fields, named after the Beatles song written by John Lennon. That wonderful woodland garden exists today. There are many trees from all different countries located there as a homage to John Lennon. So while she doesn't own the trees, she was responsible for the funding for that landscape design, and she shared in the designing along with a man named Bruce Kelly. Bruce Kelly is a Frederick Law Olmsted scholar, and although this is not original Olmsted design, it's very, very similar and based on the strengths and the beliefs of Frederick Law Olmsted and his design motifs. So Central Park has an enormous amount of trees, but no one owns any of them. Here we are moving into Tanner Springs. I'm whispering a little because sometimes there's birds here and I don't want to disturb them. And sometimes there's people, sometimes there aren't. Today there are. And we have a bird just beyond the fence here is a hollow. At the base of that hollow, formed by rock, is a natural spring. Most people don't believe me when I tell them there are actual existing natural springs. Now, if we move slowly, that bird may not fly. These are called common grackles. They're migrant birds. This isn't much to look at now. It just looks like a mud puddle, but this is an actual natural spring in the middle of Manhattan in Central Park. There's a robin, American robin, which just took flight. There's a grackle down in the mud. When there's enough water to bathe, they bathe. Otherwise, they just come here for a drink. There's a variety of interesting trees and shrubs here. One of them is a native tree that produces a very interesting fruit called, look at this bird. Get this bird on the rock. It's a hermit thrush. Watch him tip his tail up and down, up and down. That beautiful rufous-colored tail, the white eye ring, and the speckled breast. This is a thrush, much like his cousin, the American robin, also a thrush. Thrushes typically are ground-dwelling birds. They love to feed on the ground. They're often seen on lawns and woodlands. And right now, here in Central Park, we're seeing two species of thrush here at Tanner Springs.
We get some hearts for these birds, these thrush we're seeing.
I'm going to just step over the fence for a brief moment. There's an interesting tree that is right behind us. I'm going to take you over there, but I want to show you the fruit of that tree. This is Ken Chaya reporting from Central Park in the middle of New York City. I am an urban naturalist. My background is art and design. I'm at a point in my life where I just want to work on projects that really interest me, and they all have to do with nature. I lead nature tours, and if you're interested in more about me and the tours I lead, go to centralparknature.com. Welcome to Central Park. Guess what this is? No, it's not a green brain from planet Eris. It's a fruit that can be found growing from a native tree called the Osage orange. It has a pebbly, knobby-like texture, almost looks like a brain. When I turn it around, we could see this pithy rind, and inside that rind are seeds. These fruits drop from the tree and are eaten by squirrels. The squirrels don't eat the fruit itself, they eat the seeds inside the fruit. Osage orange are native trees. They grow typically in the plain states where the Native Americans called the Osage Indians once lived. The Osage Indians produced wonderful crafted bows from the wood of an Osage orange tree, which is very, very hard but very flexible. So an Osage orange tree is right over here. Let's take a look at it. And
we're getting a lot of questions about the fruit, and it's all the same question. Can you eat it? Can you eat it?
No, you cannot eat it.
Don't eat it, guys.
Don't eat it. In fact, when a fresh fruit drops to the ground and you cut into it, a milky sap oozes out, almost like the latex from a milkweed. It's not very palatable. And again, the squirrels that open these up are not eating the fruit, they're eating only the seeds inside the fruit. It's a lovely chartreuse color, and I would advise people that if you're coming into Central Park to picnic, don't set up your blanket under an Osage orange tree because they fall.
Do the animals eat it?
Animals will eat the seeds inside this, but not the fruit itself. Here's an interesting story. If you smell this, it actually smells like an orange. It has a citrusy smell to it, and I've read, and I've also heard from people, typically Europeans, that this fruit will repel a cockroach. Cockroaches hate the smell of this. And so people, many of them from Europe who live in New York, pick up this fruit and they take it home, and if they have a cockroach problem, they'll put the fruit underneath their sink, and supposedly the cockroaches vanish. So this is something that I heard from a number of sources. I've never tried it myself, but it's a very interesting. Is it a bit of folklore? Is it fact? I don't really know. But I do know this is an Osage orange tree, and this is Ken Chaya talking to you from Central Park, where I lead nature walks, tree tours. Everything about this park delights and fascinates me. I've been coming here for 29 years. And I never get tired of it. There's always something new to see, something new to learn. Today we're talking about trees and fruits and birds and the wonderful landscape design to be found in Central Park, courtesy of Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux.
We have people thanking you for the tip about the cockroaches. Also, we have a viewer that says that she's lived in New York her whole life and she never knew there were nature tours in Central Park, so she's glad to know that.
centralparknature.com. Send me an email and you'll be on my list for future walks. And I would love to meet people who are interested in having a nature encounter in the middle of 8 million people. Okay? There's so much to learn here, and when it comes to nature, we're all students, myself included. But come along on a walk with me, and I think I'll change the way you think about New York and the way you think about nature in New York.
For anyone who's just tuning in, can you repeat the name of the fruit?
Osage orange. The bark of the Osage orange looks orange, in fact. When it exfoliates, look at that. That's a nice rusty orange color. Another interesting thing about this tree is if you cut one, it will send up shoots that are extremely, extremely thorny, much thornier than what we see here. Those thorny shoots were used by early colonists to create a natural form of barbed wire, going way, way back to when the West began to be expanded and colonized. This tree, which grew in the Plain States, was used to produce a natural form of barbed wire by the spiny shoots that it sent out. Let's look at this one over here.
Ken, just letting you know, you might want to say hello to the 100 people that are watching right now.
100 people. Okay, we're in the triple digits. Outstanding. I love to meet people who are interested in nature, particularly urban nature. Because I call myself an urban naturalist, people say, gee, that's a contradiction of terms, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't, because when you go out, even in New York City, and begin to look, you never know what you're going to find here. We're a part of nature. Nature exists all around us. It's not something that's you see on a television special. We're embedded in it and we're part of it. So come on over here. Let's take a look.
This bridge looks pretty interesting, Ken.
Yes. This is called Winterdale Arch.
If you guys want us to go over the bridge, let us know in the comments or give us some hearts if you want to see some bridge action.
This bridge was designed by Calvert Vaux. Calvert Vaux was a British-born, British-trained architect who teamed up with American-born from Connecticut, Frederick Law Olmsted, and those two men together were the driving force, the designers of Central Park, before terms like landscape design were even termed. So Frederick Law Olmsted is sometimes called the father of modern American landscape design for a very good reason, because he designed Central Park, and this is where so much began with what I call the greening of urban America. Central Park took 15 years to build. In that time, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux became rock stars. Before this park was half completed, hello again. This is Ken Chaya reporting from Central Park. I'm an urban naturalist and native New Yorker who loves the great outdoors. Today in Central Park, we're talking about history, we're talking about nature, and we're talking about things like this. This is the wonderful architecture, look at that, of Calvert Vaux, a British-trained architect who, together with Frederick Law Olmsted, designed Central Park from 1858 to 1873. It took 15 years to build, and it was the very first designed urban park in the United States. Before that, there was countryside and there were cemeteries, and that was it. This was the first designed urban park. In many, many ways, this created a urban awareness for green space. And before this park was half built, half completed, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux were rock stars. Everyone wanted a Vaux and Olmsted Park. Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, they were on their way. But all of those parks, all that history started right here in Central Park. We're walking across Winterdale Arch. This drive, called the West Drive, was once called Winter Drive. So imagine this area in the winter of, say 1865, 1870. Here you are in your horse and carriage with your greatcoat on, clip-clopping down Winter Drive, surrounded by pine trees on a wintry day in New York City. Today, instead, we have bicycles and bicycle vehicles and cars and trucks. But Central Park was designed way before any of that, way before electricity, way before modern vehicles. Designed at a time when the world was a simpler place to live in. Now, down in this valley here are some lovely crabapple trees growing, and we could wander down there. There's also a magnificent ginkgo. That's that tall tree that's yellow on one side and green up near the top. Let's take a look at some of those trees and see what else we can find.
Does anyone have any questions for Ken on this gorgeous fall day in Central Park? Let us know in the comments. Let me tell you guys, wish you all could be here right now. It is stunning. It's warm. There's not a cloud in the sky. The colors are amazing. Ken is an excellent guide. Here he is. Say hi again, Ken.
You won't be able to see this, but I'm looking at a honeybee on this low flower. This is a woodland aster, and that activity right there is whenever I see a honeybee in November, I wonder, is this the last honeybee I'm going to see this season? Because of course their life cycle is coming to an end. But this bee is still, well, as busy as a bee, you might say, collecting nectar and getting last call before the winter comes. Here's something interesting. Look at this. I didn't plant this here. I just found these. What do you think these are? Anybody have any guesses? Well, I'm going to tell you. They're black walnuts. We're standing under a magnificent black walnut tree right here, and the fruit actually is edible. If you were to take these home, place them in an oven, roast them, pull the husk off, you would have a nice roasted black walnut. I see a whole lot of them down here. They've fallen off of the tree and they've rolled into this shrubby area, but this is what they look like as they come off the tree. And it's a lot of work for our native squirrels to bite all of that heavy rind off to get to the nut, but they do it. In fact, this one looks like they might have begun to chisel away at that with their teeth a bit. Let's continue. This is Ken Chaya. I'm in Central Park on a magnificent autumn day. I wish all of you people could be here with me right now because we just have a magnificent day in truly one of the world's most beautiful parks to explore. This is what I do. This is my office. Let me take you on a tour. house sparrows.
We have a loaded question here.
Uh-oh.
Is there an ecosystem in the park?
Well, of course there is. There's an ecosystem in just about anywhere you look. It may not be a good one, but there are ecosystems because nature is connected. I'll get back to that question in just a moment. I want to address this tree that we're looking at.
It's a beautiful tree.
It is a beautiful tree. This is called a hackberry, and the hackberry tree has this lovely smooth bark that has these warts on it. These warts form as the tree matures. It's almost like a tree. It's almost like an adolescent getting acne, and then the warts begin to recede into a dense, corky bark. So here's a wart, and here are more of them, and they produce a very, very fascinating texture on this tree called a hackberry. A hackberry does produce fruit. They're called hackberries, and the fruit is enjoyed and eaten by birds as they arrive in the spring and leave in the fall. Now, there was a question about ecosystems. When one uses the term ecosystem, they're talking about all of the life sources and all of the life dynamic activities within an area. Every area has life, and every area has different connections of those life to other forms of life. Once you start to observe an insect or a tree or a fruit, you find it connected to all these other things that live there. That's called an ecosystem. Yes, in Central Park we have a remarkable ecosystem. It's one that fascinates me so much, it's kept me coming here for nearly 30 years to study it.
This is so interesting, Ken, how I'm seeing it's right here in this clearing here. It goes from this fiery orange to green over here.
Yes.
I mean, this is amazing.
Yes, this is really a lovely little valley.
We have a viewer from Italy, Florence.
Welcome, Florence. This lovely valley has different trees of different species within its ecosystem, and what we're looking at here are crabapples full of fruit. I'll tell you, people who are listening right now, I'll let you in on a special secret. These are my favorite crabapples in the park. They are actually delicious, and I'm going to go over and taste one. If you'd like to come with me,
yeah.
I'll show you what I'm talking about. There are a variety of crabapple species and hybrids. Crabapples are really popular trees because they produce lovely flowers in the spring. Flowers that are pink, that are white, that are red, and every shade in between. Because of the variety and loveliness of the flowers, crabapples are popular. Because crabapples are popular, we have a lot of hybrids and cultivars. This is one type of crabapple that produces a yellow fruit. See that? That's a crabapple, and this is edible. But these fruits, while I've sampled them, are good. They're not great. I'm going to show you a crabapple tree right over here. That's actually great. What I do like about this tree is that when these crabapples become brown and soft, they're like applesauce, and you could take one of these and you could actually eat it. It's not bad. Pretty tasty.
We got some hearts for this taste test here.
Come on over here.
You guys just saw a Central Park crabapple taste test.
Now look at the beautiful fruit of this. This is a really much larger fruit, these crab apples, and this is my favorite tree in the park. Just look at that. Now you have to race the birds to get this because they're busy eating this as well. But I'm going to take one right down here. Take a look at that. You want to make sure there aren't any holes. That might be a worm going in or one coming out. But I've tasted these before and they're really very, very good. Nice. A little sweet, a little sour, just right. Kind of like me. You can take a bunch of these, take them home, mash them up, add sugar, and make a pie, a crabapple pie. And here we are in the middle of New York City. My name is Ken Chaya. I'm an urban naturalist, and I'm not only talking about trees and birds and the magnificent landscape of Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. I'm taking you on a tasting tour in Central Park.
Any foodies out there?
Anybody out there ever try a crabapple? I know they grow everywhere.
Someone said they bore a resemblance to kumquats.
Yes, a little bit. I'd say they're much more apple than kumquat. I'm seeing something interesting, a dragonfly. Here we are, what is it, November 4th? There's a dragonfly flying out to the right of this woman who's catching some beautiful sun with her dog here in this nice valley just west of the Great Lawn. Here's another crabapple tree, and look at this. This has red crabapples in it. So again, there are many, many cultivars of crabapples. There's yellow ones, there's red ones. They're very, very popular trees as ornamentals, largely due to the fact that they have brilliant, brilliant flowers. This is a crabapple tree just west of the Great Lawn in Central Park. I think I have one more tree I'd like to show you before we go. It's one of the most beautiful trees in the park. There are a variety of them right here near the West 81st Street entrance of New York City's Central Park. I call this Beach Alley because it has several interesting beech trees. We've lost a couple in the last few years due to disease and age, but we still have some wonderful beech trees on the right side of this path. That tree with the flowing branches and leaves, that's a European beech, and so is this one. I want you to have a close look at the bark, and I want you to observe a very interesting phenomenon that occurs with this tree. The branches loop out and then reconnect themselves like handles on the base of this tree. So if we swing the camera around a little bit, follow me over here, and if you're looking at, look up there, really you can actually see where a branch has emerged and reconnected, regenerated back on to the tree. That's one of the things I love about these trees. This is a beech. It's called a cut-leaf beech. It has a very, very delicate leaf. I'm going to pick one up and show it to you now. These are the leaves of the cut-leaf beech. As you can see, they have a lot of tiny, fine teeth. These are horses, mounted police of the Parks Department, and that's a job that I wouldn't mind having. As you can see, these horses are on a bridle path, and this is part of the original design of Central Park. This was an active bridle path for people to use the park to ride their horses in, and the bridle path went under the road, which we're looking at now. The bridle path is now also used for golf carts, which belong to the Central Park Conservancy. That's the body that governs the park and takes care of it in terms of, well, just about everything. Tree removal, rubbish removal, restoration, all of that is done as a courtesy of the Central Park Conservancy. So here we are, once again, this is a European beech tree. My name is Ken Chaya. I'm reporting to you from Central Park in New York City. The beech tree has smooth gray bark, and unfortunately some people cannot resist the urge to carve their initials in the tree. I often say love makes fools of us all, but please, ladies, if you're listening out there, and if you have a boyfriend that insists on carving your initials in a tree, get a new boyfriend. He's not that bright. You can do better. Well, this is Ken Chaya once again in Central Park, and I think it's time for me to go. This has been really great. I'm very excited to be with members of the 92nd Street Y and part of this really fascinating Periscope, well, what would you call it? Streaming, live video. This is all new for me. It's my first one, so thanks for having me. I hope you enjoyed it. And here we go, off and out of the park, back into the big bad old New York City. Away from the splendor, the softness, the colors, the humming of insects and the singing of birds, back to the streets.